Segment 2, Gold and Black Live. Tim House joins us. Tim, he needs an introduction only because he's relatively new, but he's making about as many friends as fast as he can, and that's his job. But Tim is a senior associate athletic director, oversees the John Purdue Club. But there's a lot to that in terms of building relationships, and comes to Purdue. You were at West Point last, but North Carolina State guy.
Graduate, yes,
Graduate.
sir. Yep.
So I'm going to ask you first about NC State, Purdue, similar places. So is that a fair statement? Or compare and contrast in terms of where you come from and what you see here.
Yeah, sure, Alan. And thanks, guys, for having me. I certainly felt that way on my interview.
Yeah.
Obviously every school has their own nuances and their own things that make them special and unique. And I've grown to appreciate the things about Purdue that make it so unique and special. The similarities are pretty strong, though, between NC State and Purdue in that, both ag and engineering focused schools, land grant institutions. I think places where people take pride in not only getting a good degree, but working hard once you have that degree and earning your place in this world. And when I was on my interview, that really resonated with me. I felt very comfortable and actually didn't even put two and two together until I got here. But the guy who's the chancellor, Randy Woodson, at NC State, was at Purdue for a couple decades, I believe, and created a similar culture there. So again, I showed up and I was like, man, these are my people. I love it here. These are good down at home, good folks. So I've enjoyed it.
Timing been a little different. Randy Woodson might have been the president of Purdue, and it worked out well for him, obviously, in Raleigh. But it really an interesting the campus, because I go down there every January to do some business planning in Durham. But I've been over to the campus. That's a great place that's really growing, just like Purdue, and all the things going on with that. All right, so you go in, you're here, and you've got a lot of excitement going around. But talk about your style in terms of getting to know. It's got to be hard just to come in and all these hundreds and hundreds of not only donors but fans that you got to become friends with. That's a challenge.
Sure, yeah. It has gotten easier since I moved into my current role. When I first came in, I was, the number 2 guy in the John Purdue Club. I was still that guy. Everyone was kind of like, well, who's that? What's he doing? Type thing. And you do have to work hard. I mean, these folks have invested a lot of time and money over the years in this institution. And you know what? I'm the new guy. I've got to earn their trust. And what I've got to do is I've got to roll up my sleeves. I've got to get out there when it's a home game. I got to get to the tailgates. I've got to work my way around Mackey for home women's and men's basketball games. And I got to be on the phone a lot too. In this role, since I moved into this job, you get a lot more people coming up to you. You don't realize people know who you are. Sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, Tim," and I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't know that you had a clue what I was doing or who I was. So it's gotten a little easier with the new role because there is a little bit more visibility with it. But I think it's still on us. I mean, we've got to be proactive and get out there. And not just myself. I say we because we've embraced the philosophy as a John Purdue club of being much more outgoing and forward-facing. We've expanded our staff size so that we can manage every member of the John Purdue Club and every season ticket holder with their own personal Boilermaker athletic representative. I serve as some folks' representative because we want to create that personal relationship where we're getting to know everyone's stories. And I know that there's, whenever you bring in new folks from the outside, there's a hesitation a little bit with some folks because we don't know the history. But you know what? It's on us to call folks, reach out to folks, and learn the history from them. So we're really trying to make an effort, not only be excited about what we think is going to happen under Mike Babinski and Mitch Daniels' leadership at Purdue, and what we signed up to join in on, but also to get to know what's going on before us and to really respect that and build off of it.
Yeah. What are some of your challenges in the short term in the John Purdue Club?
I think education more than anything else with new fans of Purdue or fans who have maybe haven't been John Purdue Club members or season ticket holders in the past, helping them understand truly where we fit into the Big Ten landscape. For instance, when I was interviewing, didn't have a clue, but we're in the bottom third in terms of the number of donors we have, and we've traditionally had one of the smallest budgets in the league. Now, from afar, you mentioned I grew up in North Carolina. I mean, always worked in sports. Never would have thought that. Never would have thought that a school that produced Drew Brees and Glenn Robinson and Rick Mount and some of the greats that have been here, and as well as a school with the academic reputation like Purdue and being a big state school, it just didn't add up. And it's funny how many times we'll have a conversation with a grad who, for whatever reason, they didn't get involved with the John Purdue Club when they were on campus or learn much about it when they were on campus. So when they left, it seemed like kind of a foreign concept to them. So when we're having that first conversation with them, 10, 15, sometimes 20 years removed, and explaining to them, well, this is where we are in the Big Ten, and this is what we're trying to change. It's a bit shocking for some of them, but that's also, I think it's been a strong tool for us too, because I'll tell you right now, the response we've gotten from Purdue alums and fans when we've told them that, it's like, well, that can't be, and we're going to change it. And so last year we had a great year. I mean, we jumped from $6.75 million in the annual fund for the scholarship fund to 8.1. And I'll tell you, a lot of it was just having that simple conversation. So I say it's a challenge, but it's really an opportunity. The challenge becomes making sure we put forth the effort to get out and have that conversation with as many folks as possible. And I think the other thing, Tom, is when you're winning, like we're fortunate to be doing right now. And I know football's had a little bit of tough time with injuries this year, but I think there's a genuine belief in the future of the program under Jeff. How could there not be? And then certainly with what we've seen in men's basketball and what I anticipate we'll see with women's basketball, with everybody coming back this year, what we see with Dave's program. So when you're winning, there's more demand. Well, supply doesn't change. So I think trying to manage that supply and demand and trying to get everybody in the seats and parking that they want, that job can be tough sometimes, because as a fan, I mean, I got into this, I'm doing what I'm doing because I'm not smart enough to make enough money to pay what some of these folks are paying to sit at mid-court, and I'm just trying to get my spot in the arena. So I'm empathetic to everyone who wants to have the best seats and the best parking, because that's me too, and so just trying to find a system that's as fair and as equitable as possible to really show our appreciation for everyone who's stepped up and done big things for Purdue University, because everyone who's a John Purdue Club member has done something big, and at the end of the day, trying to do our absolute best to make everybody feel that appreciation is always going to be a challenge, but that's a good thing when you got too many people excited, or many people, I should say, excited about the program wanting to come out to games.
Well, you have Ryan Isaac and also Peyton Stovall. Peyton's sole job is obviously not John. He was on our show last week, but they're involved. Talk about what your vision is for former athletes, and what do you see is an important challenge to get them as integrated as possible, not only in John Purdue, but in staying in touch with that Purdue experience.
Well, it was a major point of emphasis when I was fortunate enough to be able to move into the role this summer to bring on more former student athletes. You mentioned Ryan on our staff. You mentioned Peyton doing some of our corporate development with student athletes. We also hired Carly Mercer as a former swimmer, and Race Johnson, another former football player. And obviously his brother Steele was a diver here. I love that our staff now has a diversity of folks who, like me, can say, you know what, I didn't go to Purdue, but I'll tell you what, I think it's so cool that I want to make a job out of generating support for it. And I genuinely am in awe of what Purdue people do. And that's cool to be able to say, and it's cool to get that perspective. But nothing is going to resonate quite as much as someone who lived through the experience of wearing the uniform and can speak to the impact our donors make. And so for us to add a few more bodies around the building that can do that was huge for us. And to your question, it's not just about getting former student athletes to give money back. It's getting them to endorse their experience as Purdue athletes and getting them to feel like this is a family, and getting the word out in the communities they live in now that that's the case, and inspiring the next generation of Boilermakers to want to come to Purdue. That's a huge piece of it. And then tying it all back, kind of what you're talking about with Peyton. Peyton's role is part of his role, I should say, is to help our current student athletes find jobs and internships, and to take this Purdue experience and turn it into a successful life. Well, who are going to open some of the best doors for those student athletes? But former student athletes who've gone on to success in industry. And I think that's one place where we can be really, really powerful. I think we can be one of the best institutions, if not the best in the country at that, because we have, again, I go back to the previous question, we have a degree that garners success and a work ethic that pushes it even further. And so we have a ton of successful former Purdue student athletes out there that are willing to open doors, I think, for our student athletes. If we can kind of get that reputation on the recruiting trail, I think that'll really help our programs in terms of their ability to recruit. And hopefully, if we keep creating successful student athletes, it'll help the John Purdue Club too.
Tim, Mike Babinski's got a big vision for Ross-Age Stadium. You're well aware of. We've been privy to it. A lot of people have been privy to the idea, the plans. He said that it's going to be a challenge raising the money. So sort of talk about the John Purdue's club's role in raising that money and your role specifically in helping try to make that vision become a reality for Ross-Ade Stadium.
Sure. I agree with Mike. It's a challenge, but it's the opportunity of a lifetime. You know, I mean, at the end of your life or the end of your career, you don't want to look back and say, I did a lot of things that kept things the status quo. We didn't mess up. You want to say you actually got to be a part of changing something and for the better and transforming a place. I've heard Mike use the word transform a lot with that project. So I think everyone on our team is chomping at the bit to get involved. And we're already having some initial conversations with some people we think can be leaders on that project. And I'll tell you, they've been very receptive. Where we are is kind of what they'd call the quiet phase. What you want to try to do in this phase is with your folks who have been most supportive over the years, you owe it to them to go to them first and give them the first crack at being the leaders on the project and give them an idea of what it's going to look like. Obviously, nothing's been totally finalized yet, but I know Mike's shared some concepts with you. Sharing some of those concepts with these folks and saying, hey, you know, would you want to be a part of making this a reality? And then getting us to a point where we've raised a number that makes it realistic, you know, so that we can go out and at whatever point that time that is and go to the public, go to the masses, say, this is what it's going to be. Because we don't really know what it's going to be until we know about how much money we can raise. I mean, we have our pie in the sky version of what it could be if we really knock it out of the park. But then there's elements of it that, you know, you could phase in potentially, you know, if you don't move as quickly as you'd hope on the fundraising side. That being said, I feel very confident about where we are. In my specific role, along with the rest of our major gifts team, is to be out having those conversations right now and driving the strategy too. I mean, making sure part of it is finding the right donor for the right phase of the project. What is going to resonate with them and making sure we're all reading from the same sheet of music and we're aligning people's passions and values for Purdue with the impact we're trying to make with this project. So, you know, that's probably the biggest part of my role with this project is making sure across the board as our fundraisers speak about it, we're aligning people's passions with where they need to be with the project and that we're moving through our list the right way and making this thing a reality.
Timetable, I mean, you always get asked that, but what, in a perfect world, it's going to be when you raise the money, but what would you like to think that, you know, 3 to 5 years? How do you view that from that standpoint?
I'd like for it to be yesterday.
I hear you. I hear you.
You know, I hate to put any more pressure on our staff than there already is, but, you know, I think realistically, you know, over the next 365 days, we can have some conversations that really let us know, you know, what our reality can be. Exactly. Because, you know, I think in the next couple of months, some of the concepts will start to crystallize and we'll be able to go out and say, you know, this is what it's going to be. Does this appeal to you, to some folks who we know have resources? Does it make you passionate? Does it make you excited? Does it make you want to be a part of something bigger than yourself that's going to impact the next generation of Boilermakers and really be the home base for not just for Purdue football, but for generations of future Purdue students who are going to be exposed to this idea of Purdue University through football. So I think people know it's coming. You know, I mean, enough people have heard about it through you guys, and thank you for getting the word out there, and you know, through word of mouth that you know, it's on us to make sure we're using our time properly and we're getting out there and having those conversations. But I don't see why we can't, you know, have a really good idea of where we want to be, you know, sometime next year.
And you may not be able to answer this, Tim. Could you even say or ballpark how much money, what % of the project would you have to have money for before you could start putting a shovel in the ground? 30%, 40, 50?
I couldn't.
Okay.
I'd be speaking out of turn on that one. Just because, again, I think these initial conversations with what you'd call these lead donors are going to dictate what's realistic.
Okay.
And that could change what the project looks like. So I would hate to put anything out there and be wrong about it.
It's going to be an interesting time. You're not going to have any dull moments over the next period of time because in your field that is the way it is. Well, Tim, thanks so much for taking the time to join us, and let's hope for you're going to have a big gain tomorrow. And you want to have, yes, it's been a little bit disappointing to start in fact that you're 2-6, but there's still work to be done, and you haven't felt. We said offline that Jeff Brahman Company, this is still going in the right direction, and that's what you're hearing from your donors as well.
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, I think everybody kind of looks at where we are right now and says, man, David Bell looks pretty darn good. Can you imagine what he's going to be like as a sophomore, as a junior? Man, and imagine what he's going to be like when he has Rondale Moore opposite him. And, man, George Karlaftis is getting to the quarterback as a freshman. Think about what an offseason in the weight room and a nutrition program at the college level is going to look like for him. I think there's a lot of optimism about the young people that we've got in the program. And, it's been a little bit of a snake bit year in terms of injuries. And I think everybody knows Jeff's a great coach. I mean, he's, this is the toughest year he's probably ever faced as a head coach.
Probably true.
Which means that the rest of them have been pretty good, and I assume that I think everybody thinks we'll get back to that. And I think people like the effort they're seeing too. Our donors are great. We have an awesome, I've never been at a school where everyone's just tuned in.
Yeah.
I mean, a really well-educated fan base. I mean, that is pretty darn cool to see. I mean, it makes those in our position have to be on our P's and Q's.
Yeah.
I mean,
you need to be
you need to be reading up online. You need to be watching Golden Black Live. You need to be listening to the coaches and learning about the programs, because you rest assured the next lunch you have, the next breakfast you have, they're going to know what's going on. And in this case, I think that they've all shown they're educated enough to know the future is still pretty darn bright.
Hey, wait, before you go, I got to know, you're an NC State guy. Where were you?
I'm a Purdue guy.
Well, I know, but March 1983, Jim Valvano.
Oh, I was born in 1985. So I was tough life for me. I am a diehard Baltimore Orioles fan. And in 1983, my alma mater won the national championship in basketball, and the Orioles won the World Series. And neither one of them have done squat.
So you're waiting a long time.
Absolutely. That's okay. I'm going to be here when Matt Painter takes us to a national championship, and I'm going to be here when Jeff Brom takes us to a Rose Bowl, and be here when Sharon Verson takes us to a national championship.
1985, Tim?
Yeah. He's young.
Yeah.
Young. That's a good thing. All right. Thanks so much again, and we'll take a 2-minute break. Bring in Brian Newbert. We'll break down a little Purdue, Nebraska, a little Purdue exhibition basketball tonight as well. Busy weekend around West Lafayette as well, and we'll look forward to doing that in a couple minutes on Golden Black Law.